Hi, folks. It's Mike Savage here with Open Mike, doing a podcast today and talking about some of the really important issues of the day. Today, we're going to talk environment, climate change, the importance of good food and green spaces and energy reduction and clean energy. So we got a couple of special guests. I got Scott, who's with us here. Scott Skinner is the president and CEO of Clean Nova Scotia. Good afternoon, Scott. Thanks for coming.
Very happy to be here.
Great to have you. And you got an old friend there, Lil MacPherson.
Absolutely.
Who is a co-owner of the Wooden Monkey, as many people would know her, but she's also an environmental champion and activist trained by Al Gore and an acolyte of Al Gore. I think it's fair to say, and a big champion of things like local food and the importance of local food and a whole bunch of other things, and lives on a farm up somewhere near Tatamagouche, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it was awesome to have you both, and thank you both for taking the time. We are here at the fabulous BNV Studios with Mark and Peter, and it's always a pleasure to look across at Dartmouth. I know both of you know Dartmouth, and I don't know where you live, Scott. Do you live in Dartmouth?
I'm over in Dartmouth.
Yeah,
born
you
and
live in
bred.
Dartmouth? Awesome.
Yeah, office is over there, downtown Dartmouth.
Yeah, beautiful.
DDBC, all the good stuff.
No, they're the best.
I'm a Dartmouthian.
Going way back.
Woodlander for sure.
Back to when you were born some 40 years ago.
For 35, 40,
so
yeah.
It's good to have you both here.
That.
Yeah,
we'll go.
Yeah, why not? We'll go with that. So thank you both for joining us. I wanted to maybe just kick it off, and Lil, maybe I'll start with you and just talk about where your interest and passion for this topic sort of started, how you get into all this stuff.
Oh my gosh, that's such a big question. Well, I mean, really, I got into it because I'm a mom. That's really where it started. I really care about. I took motherhood very serious and cared about what my children ate, and just been a server my whole life, and just aware of the environment. I was really acid rain scared the crap out of me, honestly, when I was younger, and I think that's kind of where it started. And the Hurricane Juan came flying through our province, and I always was just interested in the industrial food system, and I was just kind of learning about all those things, being a mom. And then this hurricane slammed us, and it just scared me to death, and that's where I really changed my life. That was my big aha moment, which we all have, and started asking questions about, how much food do we have here in Nova Scotia, and, we are almost an island, and we're up north, and the answers were terrible and terrifying, and so I thought, wow, we have about 3 days of food left, which our agricultural minister just said this last year. I said, I've been saying that for 10 years, but anyway. And so, it really inspired me to say, we need to change something. So that's how Wood Monkey started to roll.
And you have changed things.
Yeah, and the monkeys changed my life.
Yeah.
Just completely changed my life, and I know we'll get more into that, but
Awesome.
Basically.
Awesome. How about you, sir? How did you get involved in an interest in this?
Well, as I think back, I think it was around 2004. I was back at Dow doing an MBA. And I read the book Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken, and in it he lays out a very clear case that the rising emissions was going to be a big problem. Climate change was going to impact pretty much all parts of our not just our ecosystems, but the way we live. And I remember as I read it, I went back and I looked to see when it was written, and it was written in the early '90s. And it was just this moment for me. I was like, we're behind. So I decided at that point I was going to direct my efforts in my career to these type of questions. And what I've done since is mostly work on practical solutions in different organizations. I worked in energy efficiency services for quite a while, and then for the last 4.5 years, I've been very, very lucky to lead just a super talented team at the Clean Nova Scotia Foundation.
Why don't you tell us a bit about what Clean Nova Scotia does?
Clean's been around for a while. We were created by an act of legislation in the province back in 1988, the Clean Nova Scotia Foundation Act. And we've basically been there to, when things become policy and priority of governments, we work alongside them to deliver programs and initiatives in the community. That's looked a little bit different over time, depending on the needs of the day. At this stage, we tend to work on more complex, multi-partner initiatives that, if you look at them, our hope is that they get scaled up and replicated to help the communities transition to the low-carbon economy, whether that's retrofits, saltwater marsh restorations, educating people about electric vehicles, green job internships, or creating the capacity in places where it's not quite as strong, whether that's rural municipalities or in other communities that are trying to find their way.
Yeah, I need a bit of help.
Yeah.
Lil, one of the things that's interested me about you is your connection to Al Gore, and people know the name Al Gore and they know the movies that he's made and the passion. But you actually have a relationship with Al Gore, and you've done some work with him. I think people would be interested in hearing a bit about that.
Well, it was really something. It is a game changer for sure. And I was actually at the Wooden Monkey, the first Wooden Monkey that we had, and I was asked to do, there's a group of people that were coming in and doing a little talk on things, and I ended up doing a talk with the Young President's Club, and there was Peter Corbin that was there, and he came up to me after, because I talked about the inconvenient truth. I talked about the climate change hurricane that changed me and the city. And so I ended up going up and getting trained. I was the first 200 trained Canadians in Canada, which is really cool in Montreal. Dave Suzuki was there, which is really something. And it's it's a game changer for you. And then I ended up doing 2 more camps in Tennessee with the Canadian team. And now I'm the Atlantic mentor for all the new trainees that come up. And I did another training as well. But Mr. Gore, Al Gore, is a pretty passionate person. He's always at the climate change conferences, and we get to meet with him too at the conference. It was pretty big. They're like, I need to see my team here, and there's like 30 of us meeting him, and he brings everybody all over the world. The experts come, and it's pretty powerful. It's terrifying, exciting. And it just rocks your world. And so since then, I've been sort of like, okay, I want to devote the rest of my life as much as I possibly can, because, time's ticking. And, when I walk along the streets every morning, I get up, I look at the atmosphere, I know what's up there. We're over 400 now. And so it's, and when I first did this, he was like, we can't be over, 400. We can't get over 400. We were like 389 at that time. We're like 415 now. So, and I know they're going to be coming to some solutions, but we want to talk about that too. So
yeah, I just want to mention, last time we chatted, you talked about the impact of people like Al Gore and Dave Suzuki,
Paul Hawkins
had on you, and yes, you both share that one. And I mentioned the work I'd done with Michael Bloomberg, who brought together some mayors from around the world.
Yeah.
And what he was famous for saying was, first of all, he used to say, "In God we trust. Everybody else bring data." That was his first thing. But he used to and he said to us last year at the City Lab, a number of mayors were there, Don Iveson and Nenshi and a couple of others. He said, people are talking about being carbon neutral by 2050. Most of the politicians will be dead by 2050. That's not the number that we should be looking at. We need to be looking a lot sooner than that. So maybe I'll ask each of you, starting with you, Scott. I mean, I know that you've read Halifax 2050, which is, I think, a really important piece of work that we've done in the city. The council adopted Shannon Meadham and her team and done great work in that. What do you see as like the immediate actions that we need to do, to hit some of the targets that we're talking about?
Well, that's the really interesting thing. If you read through Halifax, there is no order of operations. Like, unfortunately, we have to do all of these different things at once, which means we need to involve a lot of people and not just the environmental sector or government. We need to broaden that tent to the private sector. And what I'm really encouraged about is the potential to create jobs, and as we transition our economy to a low carbon economy. And the other thing I'm really passionate about is using this particular moment to along what we've heard a lot over like the COVID phase, build back better and include people who have historically been left behind. So you'll hear the term often, how if you're listening to, especially to the federal government and our provincial government at times, clean inclusive growth. We want to decouple our GDP growth. Like, we don't want to, have a economic downturn. We want to continue to grow GDP. Some people might have different views of growth and things like that, but we want to continue on that prosperous path and decouple it from emissions. We want to make sure that we're providing job opportunities, because we're not going to convince people who are in traditional fossil fuel industries or natural resource industries to come along if there isn't a job for them. Right. And we also owe it to take this moment to find jobs for people who haven't seen themselves reflected in this.
Yeah. Lil, any thoughts on that?
No. Well, everything he's saying is so true, and we really do have to do everything we can at once. This is the biggest job in the world that we have in front of us. But the one thing that really excites me and really changed my world, because I've been sort of dabbling into all kinds of things, politics and infrastructure of cities, which really interests me, and waste management and energy. But I went to a Copenhagen meeting that really rocked my world, and I got into a meeting that was packed, just made it in the door, where there was 7 countries got together. And they were talking about small-scale sustainable farmers are cooling down the planet. And I said, what are they talking about? So I started to hear this amazing story unfolding where they talked about the Serengeti and animals in motion, and they were just, photosynthesis and bringing carbon down from the atmosphere. And it is the only technology on the planet that can actually do a drawdown. This is the Paul Hawkins drawdown. And it's a game changer, because if we stopped all fossil fuels today, if everything was solar and then we weren't burning any more fossil fuels, we still have about 200 years of emissions that are just, it's going to keep warming. So we have to draw down. And agriculture is powerful. Mm-hmm. It is so powerful. I mean, the Rodale Institute did a 30-year study on this, and they're measuring the carbon credits, and they're measuring the carbon in the atmosphere and in the soil. And so much to get into, but it's a game changer. And then if we change all our agriculture to regenerative agriculture, we eat better, the air is cleaner, the rivers are cleaner, we're healthier, the economy booms. I mean, it's just it's a huge, beautiful ripple effect. But we have to draw down. And we went on the Al Gore just recently being trained. They talked about they're coming up with some really scary stuff, because nobody's talking about the drawdown. So we have to stop our emissions from going up, but we got to suck it down. Mm-hmm. We got to eat our way out of climate change.
Well, we've come a ways, at least, since the days when President Reagan said that trees cause pollution. Do you remember that? And,
oh, my God.
And then he went to a rally, and there was a bunch of people dressed up as trees with signs saying, "Kill me now before I kill somebody else," or something like that. Like that.
God.
So but those are all, that's the sort of interlocking number of priorities. It's energy, it's how we build, it's what we eat, it's where we get our food, it's how we get to work, it's where we work, it's how we work. Yeah. And all these things. And I think during COVID, it's a crisis, and it's a health crisis that's led to an economic crisis, but we have a climate crisis, and we also have a social justice crisis that we're trying to figure all these pieces out. But to the point that you're making, the dealing with the environment can be part of the economic recovery from COVID, and also the economic buildup in the years to come. Scott, do you want to just thoughts on that?
Absolutely. There's so many different types of jobs that can be created through actions to address climate change, and you see them laid out in Halifax. There's different categories. There's residential and commercial renewable energy. There's a large retrofit need. There's transportation design. Like, transportation is one of the sources of emissions that's very, very hard to change that trajectory. But when you start to design different responses to that, you can create all kinds of jobs. And they're not just technical. These organizations that are doing this work, they have marketers, accountants, administrators. There's all kinds of opportunities that can be created for youth coming out of our universities and community colleges, and hopefully we can get better at including opportunities for immigrants. That's really what I spend a lot of my time on, is thinking about how we can provide those practical solutions and opportunities for the people as we scale this out. Because as Lil is alluding to, like, if you're looking at reducing emissions and drawing down, like, we're talking about a scale of intervention that's orders of magnitude more than we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. Like, the Halifax plan is more ambitious than the federal government targets. It's a 75% decrease in emissions from by 2030. That's on the 1.5 temperature increase trajectory. Like, it's so ambitious that we don't have time to get overwhelmed by it. We just have to get to work. Just start doing it. And however imperfect it is. And if you have time to listen to Shannon Miedema, who's working on this at the city, and she went through, and her and some colleagues, different stakeholders went through this complexity training recently, and they're talking a lot about rapid prototyping and giving yourself an ability to try things out and fail. We need to give ourselves a license to try and not get it exactly right, and then quickly pivot and move forward, but keep an eye on jobs and training.
So I think that's very true, and I think governments have a responsibility that we've seen in the private sector, particularly in the tech sector, and tech has taken off in Halifax, is that people have to have a license to fail in order to succeed, and governments have been very slow to accept that, and I think you're 100% right that we have to have people like Shannon who are prepared to do things that have to be done, recognizing that if it doesn't work, you know what, we'll learn from that and we will do something else. But this interlocking, and I think, Lil, that there are communities, even within HRM, St. Margaret's Bay and Eastern Passage, who are accepting this challenge. And this really has to come from community, right? I mean, there has to be a buy-in and a relationship between all orders of government and the private sector and NGOs, but really, it has to be in the community.
Yeah, definitely. And they talked a lot about that during the climate training last month, which was completely different than the last 3 trainings. But I agree, and I think our strength, we've learned a lot from the COVID. I mean, I've talked to some of the farmers that are with us, and they said, "Wow, my sales have tripled." I'm like, "Really?" So people, because of the lockdown, because of the bubble, people are forced to go within and buy from ourselves and support each other. I mean, that's where the power is. The multiplier effect just on buying local food is really amazing. And doing anything local. I'm a big local, advocate of local businesses, and that's where.
Really?
Yeah, I know. And I just did a National Film Board talk on that. We did a little. It's really cool, actually, all about small businesses and COVID. But just Detroit City alone, they said, okay, we're going to do 20% of our. We're going to ask everybody to buy 20% more local food. Well, that created in the city 4,700 new jobs and $20 million in taxes for the city. So and talking to people from Syria and India, and they're all farming, they're all here. We've got so many places in the city we could use as incubator plots. So we could really rock the city and be one of the most healthiest places to live in Canada, and be really leaders in food, in urban agriculture.
Yeah, I think that's very true. We do, as HRM, of course, we're the largest physical city in the country. We have full service farms within HRM, and we also have opportunities within the urban core to have
put sheep on the hill?
Agriculture. Well, you know what? I thought there used to be sheep on the hill.
I would love to do that.
Maybe they moved them out. But I think what COVID has shown us, like there is a lot of food-related learning we've had through COVID. The way people have shared, the way the mobile food market, which is a great initiative.
Yes,
I have some relationship to that, but how that started going out into the community and bringing food to people, the increase in the community gardens that people have had. A friend of mine who lives in Dartmouth who decided she was going to bake 100 loaves of bread for people that needed bread. Food is where we gather, and as you know from your business and your life, and
where it starts.
Using that as an opportunity to bring people together to have these solutions is really, I think, kind of an important thing. Tell me something like that we could do, either we as a city or we as a government in HRM or a community or a province. Tell me one thing we could do next week. Can you think of something we could do next week that we're not doing right now? That wasn't on the list of questions.
It wasn't on the list.
I'm going to come back to you because you probably have one.
I have one. Well, I think what we can do right away, I'd love to do this, it might take a little time. I need a tractor if I could borrow one of your tractors. And I pitched this went in and pitched this to some schools when I was running with the last election, and the kids loved it. I think we have an opportunity to go into, there's a couple of schools that I have to look at in Dartmouth, Mount Edward School being the first one because that's my school. They're surrounded by concrete. Let's lift that concrete up and redesign the outside of the school system. And we can, and they talk about this in sequestering carbon, saying schoolyards are perfect. And I thought just to do 3 things. Let's put a little small mini, forest in there to teach them about forestry, a little orchard and gardens. Get Nikki Jabor with us, and I talked about that with the kids in school, and they loved it. And actually bring the education out, teach them about climate change, sequestration, farming. I'm 10 years old. I can trim an orchard. I mean, I think we could do that with the government right away.
Yeah.
That'd be something. That'd be really fun to do.
Teach by doing.
The kids and teach them from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm proud of a lot of the stuff we've done in the city on the food side of things, and a lot of it's not us. It's it could be Hope Blooms. It's the Dartmouth North Grove. It's community gardens. It's the pizza oven in Dartmouth. But it's all about having people having a relationship with their food that they've never really had enough of, and understanding where it comes from. Right. So. that's been a big passion for you.
But the thing we could probably add to this is we can actually put signs everywhere saying this is carbon farming. This is what it's sequestering. That's a whole new language. So what do you mean? So I'm starting personally a carbon farm myself. I'm doing a carbon farm.
I remember you telling me that. I think that's cool.
And so I think sort of different languages and the opportunity that you guys have here, putting all kinds of signs and educational signs out to educating people on climate change. And this is where we are, this is where we're going. And
yeah, I mean, to that point, I think education is so important at this point. And we need to think about it for groups of people that we don't always think about. So, I mean, we generally think of education, you think of youth and schools. In many cases, youth, like, they are ahead of us on this. It's part of what they know and they learned and they feel. Like, we saw this with the climate strikes last year. But I think we also need to look at, educating the trades. Get them on board with what's going to hit them through codes and standards. Yeah. Educate the civil service. There's a lot of people in a lot of departments of government that this just hasn't been an issue for them, but it will be soon because all of these things are cross-cutting. They affect health and finance and education, environment, energy, labor and advanced education, and we need people to understand like how they can be a part of it. And if you go back to your question, which I kind of skipped on the first time.
Take a shot.
It's just a point I would make is, and it isn't something to run out and do tomorrow, but we cannot wait any longer for government at any level to institute legislation, regulation, and policy around getting moving on these things that are written in Halifax and other plans. Like, we cannot wait for another cycle. We have to start. As Lil has said very clearly, we're behind. We are way behind, and the things we do today will show up in emissions profiles 3, 4, 5 years from now. So if we wait for another cycle, for the next person to become the leader, or the next government to come through, things will not happen. We've watched this for a decade and a half.
Over and over and over.
And this is a scary thing that's got me back in the food box, and I'm not going to. We have 60 harvests left on the planet. 60. That's it. All right, we have so much desertification happening right now all over the planet. So that's even more of a reason why we have to become more resilient in Nova Scotia and become food secure, because we're going to be in trouble. People are, we put our grocery list out to the rest of the world, and all of a sudden we'll go, oh, wait a second, we can't fill your grocery list because we've had droughts and fires. And, Russia's also last year turned some trains around exporting on grains, food prices go up. So this is a global issue, and I'm trying to deal with this locally so that we're strong. Come to Nova Scotia, Halifax, man.
Well, that's an interesting point. One of the things that I hear about from people who don't support Halifax 2050, and there are people out there, is why are we doing this here? Trump is bringing back coal, and China is building all these power plants, and what difference can we make? And the fact of life is you make the difference you can make, first of all. But secondly, on some of the stuff you're talking about with food, we can do that regardless of what anybody else is doing.
So we have security. And actually, as bad as Trump is, and he's got nothing to do with this, United States is far ahead of Canada in regenerative agriculture and that whole talk. Far ahead of us. We are failing as a country. It's 10 years ago I had to go to get canola oil, which is our Canadian oil. We invented that. That's our oil. I had to go get non-GMO canola oil from Germany.
Crazy.
Couldn't find it in Canada. So I'm planning on pitching this to the ministers, in this country and in this province, and I think we can really make a mark in the world, in Canada, Nova Scotia, because we're the perfect size. We
are. We're also the safest place on the planet right now as well.
I know.
At the same time, so people are going to be flocking here. Yes. I want to just say this point about Halifax 2050, and I think we're going to stop calling it 2050 because that gives people a false sense of how much time we have.
That's right.
And that's something Shannon agrees with as well.
Yeah,
but
totally.
This report talked to a lot of people in the community. It wasn't done in isolation like a lot of government reports might tend to be, but it also was spread out the entire team at HRM. So you can talk about environment, but if you're not talking to the transit folks, if you're not talking to the Parks and Rec, the Transportation and Public Works Department, the Planning Department, all those things are have a big impact on environment, and I think we kind of recognize that. I want to just ask you, how do we keep climate on the forefront? I think it's there to some extent, but the IPCC comes out and we got to do something, and there's an election and we got to do something. How does it stay? There are people like yourselves in the community that are working hard on this all the time, but how do we make sure that all orders of government and the people are engaged in this and it doesn't slide, because we can't afford to let things slide for anymore?
In my mind, it's really simple. It's jobs. Right? If we're not articulating how there are going to be good jobs created from this, and when I say good jobs, I mean and I applaud the council and a lot of the people running for council about this, about looking at living wage. We need people to be making safe, to be able to earn a wage that they can live a safe life with quality of life and well-being. So if we can't make the case around jobs, around climate action, we're going to have a really hard time.
Yeah.
And that is a case that can be made, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, the case it's already proven. I mean, I tell anybody, if you go to a climate conference and a green trade show, when the world gets together, it's the biggest party in the world. You just go, oh yeah, because that's where all the millions of dollars and that's where all the negotiations, and it's just huge. But I think as a city, it would be really cool. I mean, there's I see 10 cars a day idling. And city cars too, and I've gone up to city workers and go, hi, what's your climate policy? Do you mind turning your school bus off by sitting there for hours? And so I think just in-house work would be great, but I think we need to start when you go to climate conferences, they do have things in front of the city hall all the time about this is where we're at, maybe climate art. They have art and educating the people as they're walking around our city. Oh, look, isn't this cool? And this is what this is doing. Just the the Alderney Landing, the way we the energy over there, that the Volt, right? That's all cool and nobody knew that was the
Alderney
first in
5.
the world, right?
Yeah.
Nobody knows it. They're like, what? So I think we need to really voice our successes and put it around the city.
Yeah. Now you've been down this road, this mayoral road before. Didn't you run for mayor?
Yes, I did. Against you, was it?
Oh my God, that was you. Yes, it was. That was you. So you know the importance of bringing this at a political level. But I really, you mentioned the children. Kids are way ahead on things like the environment, recycling. That you put something in the wrong place and your kids. They get mad at you. I think kids led the charge on things like anti-smoking and a lot of other things. They kind of intuitively get it. And I think in a lot of cases, if we go into the schools to talk to kids about the environment, they already know it. It's not the kids that miss the message, I don't think. It's the people who, of my generation, that have helped to cause this problem, and we have to take action immediately to fix it up. Any last thoughts on this before we wrap it up? It's been a lot of fun to talk to you guys.
Yeah, this was a pleasure. It's I think that the thing I always try to bring it around to when I'm trying to make the case of why this is important. It really is for me. It's around creating jobs and opportunity in the community, because I think we can do both. We can address the issues of climate change and we can create jobs and have economic security. And really, involving the community is going to be really important. And we can't lose sight of some of the bigger social issues that are our city's experiencing. And my hope is we can pair all these things together, like the housing affordability and low-income housing crisis. Like, we can look at these things all together and try to find solutions that try to address them all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and I'm trying to really help people get hope, because it really is paralyzing. We're all paralyzed. And I again, go back to the kids. I would love to go into the schools, and transform the outside of their schoolyard and make it a learning center. And so they'll go home and teach their parents, which are kind of children, go home and teach their kids about their parents about sequestration. And we have a little mini forest now. What does that mean? And I know how to plant a garden myself, and I know about orchards or whatever. I really think it's important. And I will say this soil sequestration, and if you can see the documentary called Kiss the Ground, it explains what I'm talking about. But if we do this, we can draw down these emissions in 20 years. Mm-hmm. It is a game changer. Mm-hmm. So I'm like jumping right in the food box, and I'm going to talk about this till I'm dead. But, because we don't have time. But that really gives us hope, and it gives us hope. So I think that's...
Lifesaver. It's a lifesaver.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think, I remember when, for example, Megan Leslie first started talking about plastic in the ocean, and people's eyes glazed over and said, what are you talking about? We've got issues to deal with right here. and that's changed over time. But we still have arguments about things like extended producer responsibility. What do we do with packaging? You know, we had this back and forth even on the plastic bags with the province and the feds as well. I think people are getting the message. It's just that it's not a good time to be a slow learner on the environment because, as you said, it's not really 2050. It's much sooner than that, and we all have to step up and do our part. So I thank you. I thank you both for coming in. Scott, best of wishes to you and to the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
It's great to see you on the Dartmouth side every now and then. And Lil, great to be with you. And
Great to be here. Thanks.
you are doing
Not
the
bad.
work of the ages. And are you going to tell people how you banged yourself up, or is
I
that?
know. I was, jumping around at the farm, and I slipped and fell. So bad. It's all good.
Doing
But
important
I
work.
didn't cry or nothing. I got up and it's okay. No. This is a very important conversation, so thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Scott Skinner and Lil MacPherson. Thank you both very much. That's Open Mic for today.